And we're talking The Hidden Fortress. This is Akira Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress. I'll talk about Kurosawa in a sec. If you like a film called Star Wars by G. Lucas, as in George Lucas, you may have some invested interest in The Hidden Fortress because George Lucas ripped off particular things from this film, and it's not an official adaptation. Star Wars didn't officially adapt The Hidden Fortress, but George Lucas has credited this film, and you can pretty much see this film at work in Star Wars. And I'm just gonna put it out there. This film, much more superior film than Star Wars. Okay, I've said it. There you go. If you're a Star Wars freak, feel free to heckle and abuse me for making such a statement. But the fact is, it's true. Star Wars, ladies and gentlemen, isn't a very well-made movie. And if you like it, fine. But The Hidden Fortress is a well-made movie. And that's what I'm saying. So if you want to see a well-made Star Wars, then I strongly implore you to check out The Hidden Fortress on the big screen, on Blu-ray, with the Criterion, right? 2K digital restoration. And it's going to look absolutely fantastic. So why you would not want to experience this, ladies and gentlemen? So if you don't like Star Wars, you're going to love it because it's The Hidden Fortress. It's Kurosawa, right? At his peak, at his best, just bringing it home. And if you do like Star Wars, I think you're going to have greater appreciation for George Lucas's film. Or maybe you have less appreciation. I don't know. Will you have more appreciation? I'm sure you have more appreciation. Anyway, the point is, The Hidden Fortress is just terrific. And better than Star Wars. That's how good it is. Better than Star Wars. Said from a person who's not much of a Star Wars fan. But, I'm just saying, Hidden Fortress is great. I think I'm overstating this point now. But George Lucas, speaking of George Lucas, is a huge Kurosawa fan. Like, huge Kurosawa fan. And he, along with Scorsese and Spielberg and, those kind of Paul Schrader, they were all into Kurosawa big time. And they brought him over to America for a number of restorations of his films and things like that. And they were the kind of the campaigners behind giving Kurosawa a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Academy Awards. And as I'll talk about right now, a number of Kurosawa's films were actually made by Western filmmakers. Now, there's this sort of tagline that's been put onto Kurosawa, which is, so you've got Ozu. And Ozu is considered the most Japanese of the Japanese directors, for whatever that means. And Kurosawa is considered the most Western of the Japanese directors. And it seems that, Ozu's tag is something of great affection. The most Japanese of the directors. Like, he's not a sellout. And Kurosawa, he's the most Western of the directors, in that he's not really Japanese, which is complete baloney. I remember when I was at film school, back in the olden days, and a lecturer said to me, "Are you a Kurosawa fan or are you an Ozu fan?" wanting me to choose between the two of them. Well, I mean, I felt like compelled to pick one of them. So I picked Kurosawa, feeling like if I like Kurosawa, I can't like Ozu. And that's complete baloney. Because now I love them both. And I think they're both terrific, and they're both extremely Japanese directors, and they're both extremely influenced by the West. So this whole thing is... Anyway, Kurosawa, a lot of his films have been made and picked up. So the thing about the Kurosawa film is when you watch it, they're quite easy to follow, because often, you've seen his films being made over and over again, like The Seven Samurai becoming The Magnificent Seven, Yojimbo being sort of picked up by Sergio Leone in, one film in particular, but a number of films. And then there's just other films like High and Low, which is kind of noir-y kind of film. Stray Dog, which I love a lot, which is a crime film. Just his films, just this filmography is just amazing. And a lot of Shakespeare adaptations amongst all these other films, like Ran. And of course, probably his most accessible and perhaps his most loved film is Throne of Blood, which is his remaking of Macbeth, which is, again, really, really terrific. And The Hidden Fortress is in 1958. And if anyone has a time machine, put me in the time machine and send me to Japan in about 1958, because that's the time you want to be as a film lover. That's the country you want to be at, and that's the period you want to be at. Think about it. You got Ozu, right? He's making Good Morning. You got just amazing Japanese films coming out at the time. Giants and Toys, 1959. And Kurosawa, he's just killing it at this time. Making unbelievable films. And The Hidden Fortress comes out in 1958. So Kurosawa and Ozu are both just at the top of their cinematic greatness, in the late 50s. And sadly, Ozu died when he was young. I think he was sort of 60 or very, very early 60s. And for a director, that's it's baby age. You're just sort of coming into your own at about 65. But Kurosawa went on, and he did a number of, he kept just doing really interesting stuff. And all of his films are worth watching, and certainly The Hidden Fortress, which is just a wonderful, wonderful movie. And to have a think about that term, the most Western, like what is Western about his films when you're watching The Hidden Fortress. Now, Hidden Fortress, what is this film? Well, now the English translation of its Japanese title, right, is Three Bad Men in a Hidden Fortress. So the English title isn't a direct translation, because a direct translation would be Three Men in a Hidden Fortress. Now, why did he call his film Three Bad Men in a Hidden Fortress? Well, a lot of people say it's a nod to his hero, John Ford, who was an American Western director. And he made a silent film called Three Bad Men, which is really terrific, Three Bad Men. If you get a chance to have a look at that, I highly recommend that. It's one of my favourite John Ford films. And so it could have been that. Have a think about the title and what's going on there. I actually prefer the title Three Bad Men in a Hidden Fortress to just The Hidden Fortress. Anyway, when you're watching it, think about what is this film. Think of the genre, the category. It's kind of a road movie. It's sort of, excuse me, it's sort of a Western, and it's very much a fairy tale. And if you kind of look at, Peter Jackson's, those epic trilogy things that he's doing with The Hobbit and stuff like that, there's a lot of kind of thinking about what Kurosawa was kind of doing with fantasy in these films that he was making, because there is this fantastical thing going on in his films. And his films they're not wanting to be put neatly into a particular genre, a particular category, because they're wanting to dance around all of these things. So they're kind of hard to put in one category, but at the same time, they're very easy to actually place. So have a think about that when you're watching the film. How would you describe the setting, and how is it shot and framed? We're talking about camera here. And so you got long lenses and wide frame to set up characters off against the landscape for the most part. So the most part, the landscape is dry and barren. Think about that. Think about the toughness of the landscape. And there's always comments being made about Japan and where Japan's at and the way that the characters are kind of against nature and some are with nature, and the harshness of the Japanese landscape in trying to characters trying to survive this landscape. Now, the fortress itself is placed in kind of the middle of nowhere, right? So think about where it's placed in the environment, and it's surrounded by these amazing steep hills. And these amazing steep hills have to be appreciated on the big screen, ladies and gentlemen. Now, underground, the fortress, there's this like labyrinth of passageways and caverns that are linked to a dense forest, otherwise hidden from view. So it's like an other world hidden from the view. So it's like a Japan within Japan, if that makes sense. And again, have a think about what that's actually saying about this world that he's trying to expose, the world within the world. And it's sort of like a fantasy world. But at the same time, it's almost like the view that we externally have of Japan is perhaps not the real Japan. And he's going to take us underneath. And it's all very exciting, secret passageways and things like this. Yet, right, this fortress, this wonderful fortress, is obliterated by a puff of smoke. Like that, it's gone. Now, what's he saying about that? Well, impermanent space, it's vulnerable space, it's Japan, it's 1958, it's post-war Japan. There's a lot of things that have been said about Japan here, and the Japanese people like being on the run, and the fact that these kind of hamlets literally are being set up and then destroyed. And it's about the characters not being able to put any security or faith in places of home and housing and things like that, because that's just been completely wiped out. And if you look at the history of Japan at the time, that was very much what was happening to Japan, with bombings and things like this. So I think there's some really interesting topical comments that are being made about Japan. And just remember like the time of the film, when the film was actually being made. It's being made at a time with other films like Giants and Toys and Good Morning. And all of these films are about progress and the consumerism of this American influence that are coming in, and the parents having to try and navigate their own traditions and what they think is important traditions against this consumer culture that's actually happening and snowballing. And here, again, it's another film about the future of Japan and where is Japan going, and particular traditions that are being held up, and the loss of identity that's actually happening in Japan at this time. Now, the acting style is also worth thinking about. The realness of the impoverished peasants fighting for their lives but constantly distracted by the promise of treasure, keeping the film down to earth. So the thing is, there's a number of contrasting acting styles across the film, but the realness of the impoverished peasants, and there's some real kind of truth to their performances. It does keep the film grounded in a particular reality, and it allows for the sort of the histrionic performance of the three central characters. Now, This is a quote from Catherine Russell, and she says, the characters are all larger than life, but the story is gripping, and what Kurosawa achieves through his pacing and his comedy is a lightness that has made the film one of the most important and influential action films of world cinema. So think about that. Think about the acting style and how there is actually comedy coming through the acting styles and things like that. And also, why would she be claiming that this is one of the most influential films of action films of world cinema? Think about that. More on the acting. Think about the faces. And Russell goes on to say, a heroic montage of Yuki's face. So she's like the film's princess. Princess in a fairy tale idea of the term princess. A heroic montage of Yuki's face superimposed on the crescent moon flag of her clan as she surveys the landscape is legible as a nostalgic longing for an imaginary nation. So again, it's made at a time where Japan is really looking for a sense of identity. Right. The idea of a phenomenological experience of Asian films implies that we have a direct encounter with the situations and the characters within the film narratives. If we think of experiencing Asian films by watching Asian faces and taking in what they reveal to us, we are directly experiencing a factor that will lead us towards greater appreciation of the films. So Stephen Teo was saying, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to watch the faces. It's all about the faces. And Kurosawa, he loved a face, and there's a lot going on in the faces, okay? And it's when the faces don't necessarily respond in the way you think they will that so much is being said. And that actually is a John Ford trick, where John Ford would always say to John Wayne, don't respond, just look and let the audience put your response, they'll put it on you if the face is blank. So don't just give it to them. And that's very much going on in this film. So think about the use of faces and the fact that you've got that moment where Yuki's face is superimposed onto the moon. It says so much about, imaginary nations and identity, and the identity of one's individual self and the identity of the nation that's going on in the film. Okay, final things. The pace of the film. I think the pace of the film, it moves on in this kind of nice, rapid kind of way. The colours. Now you may be thinking, Steve, you're an idiot, because the film's black and white, you dodo. Well, excuse me, right? Just because the film's black and white doesn't mean it doesn't have use of colours. There is darkness and lightness in the colours that are being used. And can I say, don't let the fact that it's black and white turn you off, because it's vibrant. And it's just wonderful. And it looks so good. And I'll say it, one of the greatest black and white films ever. All right, I've said it. The sound of the music, just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful music scores. And the Criterion transfer is really just, just a wonderful soundtrack. I'm just setting that up. What's the setting? Where is it set? There are clear binaries established across the film, which I think is why it's so easy for us to watch, one character being contrasted by another, and also environment being contrasted against each other. And, this conflicting Japan and this very sort of vulnerable, insecure Japan that's being set up. How is colour used? Describe the camera, how it moves, where it moves. There's some great silences across the narrative. Think about those. When is the film just silent? The weather. Kurosawa, great director of weather. And there's nothing I enjoy more, ladies and gentlemen, than hearing the sound of wind caught on film. And I'm not joking. Give me a film with the sound of wind, and I just love it. I just love it. What is the Asian cinema experience of this film? Okay. How does a film culturally and socially position itself? Who is the intended audience? Does the film actually work for you today? And who is the intended audience? I'll tell you who's the intended audience. Anyone who loves Star Wars. That's the intended audience, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't know if like the Astor is doing a double bill of Star Wars and the Hidden Fortress. But if there's any programmers at the Astor listening to the lecture, I would strongly suggest that you put that on as a double bill, because that will get them lining up. Hidden Fortress, followed by Star Wars. I would go to that. Asian authenticity. Where is the Asian authenticity? There is a lot of authenticity going on. Just the use of landscape and the way he films and photographs landscape and the weather and all of those characters, especially the destitute characters, and just the need that is coming through their performance of survival. It's just wonderful stuff. And how would you describe the setting and how is it shot and photo? All right, I'm going to leave it there. And you're in for a treat. You'll be thanking me. You'll be thanking me in the corridors after watching this. Because it is The Hidden Fortress. It is Akira Kurosawa's wonderful film. And, you got to play a Kurosawa film in a course called Asian Cinemas. Which one do you pick? Often it's Yojimbo. That's the popular choice. But, I like to go outside the popular choices and give you something that's really going to stay with you. And, I'm thinking a lot of you like Star Wars. So, Hidden Fortress for me is the no-brainer film. And it's a great film. It's a wonderful film. It's a beautiful film to look at. And there's so much to talk about. In regard to so many things, let alone the sound of wind on film. And with that, I'll leave you to it, and I look forward to watching this film with you in the cinema on the big screen. Bye for now.